coming on the air with history on the Hill and senators finally hearing from President Biden's groundbreaking Supreme Court nominee. And in the first day of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearing, we're getting a glimpse at who she is and the questions she's going to face. Ahead, a context check on the claims of one Republican and the inside scoop on why another thinks she should be confirmed ASAP. Plus, Ukraine refusing to surrender Mariupol to the Russians, as top Western officials now believe there is no winning this war. What the last foreign journalists in Mariupol are saying now about their horrifying escape from a destroyed city. We've got that later in the show. And hey, the holidays are coming up at the gas pump, for some of you at least, as some states look for ways to cut down on costs. We've got more on that and how the gas price spike is hitting gig workers hard in tonight's original. Plus, Disney workers planning a walkout to protest how the company responded to Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill, the message Disney's CEO now has to try and keep things up and running. And deadly wildfires giving way to huge thunderstorms and tornado watches in the South. Why our weather team is giving out its highest threat level in more than 2 years. We've got that a little later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and just within the last 90 minutes or so, a black woman made her case to the Senate for the first time ever about why she deserves to be on the Supreme Court. That's Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. There she is, taking the oath. President Biden's pick to take over for Justice Stephen Breyer. And in her opening statement to the Senate Judiciary Committee, she got personal and practical about who she is and what she's about.
I know that my role as a judge is a limited one, that the Constitution empowers me only to decide cases and controversies that are properly presented. I also believe in transparency, that people should know precisely what I think and the basis for my decision. I have dedicated my career to ensuring that the words engraved on the front of the Supreme Court building, equal justice under law, are a reality and not just an ideal.
And as Democrats and Republicans delivered their opening statements, we got a kind of preview over the next couple days. Watch.
There may be some who claim, without a shred of evidence, that you'll be a rubber stamp for this president. For these would-be critics, I have 4 words. Look at the record.
Most of us couldn't go back to our offices during Kavanaugh without getting spit on. Hope that doesn't happen to y'all. I don't think it will.
It's about time that we have a highly qualified, highly accomplished black woman on the Supreme Court. It's about time our highest court better reflects the country it serves.
It's not about race. We will see Democrats in the media suggest that any senator that is skeptical of your nomination, that questions you vigorously, or that dares to vote against you must somehow harbor racial animus.
I want to go now to Vitali on Capitol Hill. So, Allie, let me start with the latest thing that we heard from the Hill, which was Judge Jackson's opening statement. And it really felt like, in some ways, a pre-buttal, right? It was heavily biographical. Her family was in the room. She thanked them. It was extremely heartfelt. But she also was very clear, like, hey, I am an arbiter of neutrality, and that is my judicial philosophy, which seemed aimed at some of those Republicans that we just heard from.
Yeah, Hallie, because that has been one of the central questions here. And I just finished talking to former Senator Doug Jones, who has really been leading Ketanji Brown Jackson through this process with a lot of his former colleagues here who he knows well on the Judiciary Committee. And what he was saying is that she is the one who will be best to speak to and rebut the attacks from Republicans. But what I was really struck by, and what I think is going to be indicative of something that we see tomorrow from her when we really get into the nuts and bolts of senators asking her questions about her record and the kind of judge that she's going to be, is that quote that you pulled about her talking about transparency. Maybe it's because I'm a journalist. I love powerful people saying that they are fans of transparency. But at the same time, I think that it might be the approach that she ends up taking tomorrow, talking these senators through the points of her record, even in granular detail, so that everyone understands the way that she approaches the law, the way that she approaches its interpretation, and the way that she allows each side of a case to be heard, even in some of the more egregious and false examples that Republicans have trotted out in recent days.
Okay, well, let's talk about one of those examples, Hallie. And I'm going to ask you to stand by because I want to explain to people, you know, this is going to be an exchange. I think a lot of folks are going to be watching. And by the way, we're going to be carrying it live right here on NBC News Now tomorrow. And it involves Republican Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, who has, in a misleading series of tweets in his opening statement, accused Judge Jackson of being too lenient in cases involving people who possess child sex abuse images. I want to play what he said.
What concerns me, and I've been very candid about this, is that in every case, in each of these 7, Judge Jackson handed down a lenient sentence that was below what the federal guidelines recommended and below what prosecutors requested. I'm not interested in trapping Judge Jackson. I'm not interested in trying to play gotcha. I'm interested in her answers.
Okay, we're interested in what the context check is here. So let's do that before we move on here, because, number one, they're not particularly grounded in fact, the things that you heard Senator Hawley say. And number two, you're going to hear them a lot, and you're going to hear about them a lot over the next few days. It all started on Twitter when he claimed Judge Jackson argued for a type of, quote, less serious child porn offender when she was on a bipartisan panel that makes recommendations to Congress about issues. But here's the thing. The White House says the quotes Hawley cites are not in context because he's referring to questions she asked an expert witness. So these were questions she was asking, not conclusions about her own opinion. And it's not just the White House saying that. If you look at the record, that's what the record shows, too. The White House says that Hawley is trying to discredit her history. So here is the context check. Here are the facts. It's true. The commission called on Congress to reduce mandatory minimum sentences because the law, quote, fails to adequately differentiate among offenders based on their culpability and sexual dangerousness. In layman's terms, they think the people who possess child sex abuse images should be given lighter sentences than those who force children to carry out these acts. And a 2010 survey shows 71% of district judges, so the majority of judges think these mandatory minimums are too high. And less than half of those convicted for so-called non-production crimes get sentences that match those guidelines. So this is part of a legitimate debate inside the legal community here. And with that all said, Allie, let me go back and put it to you here. Talk about Senator Hawley's strategy in continuing to bring this up and what else we might see from people who, let's be honest here, might have an eye on a very big national stage as they're looking for maybe a national run of their own come 2024, potentially.
Yeah, and Hallie, that's really the explanation here, right? I'm so glad that you laid out what that debate is in legal circles, because I was even talking to prosecutors who say, and I looked at the guidelines, frankly, that prosecutors are supposed to use in prosecuting these cases, and it doesn't necessarily differentiate between the ways that one can disseminate or receive child pornography. And so if you are a prosecutor moving through and trying to figure out what an appropriate sentence should be, it does, the years rack up quite quickly, and that's why there is such a debate in legal circles about this. That being said, the game that Josh Hawley is playing, and quite frankly, it's also a similar game to the one that we're likely to see played by people like Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Tom Cotton. It's called the I might run for president in 2024 game. This kind of a hearing has been a launching pad in the past. We saw in 2018 the way that Democratic senators with their eye on the presidential prize were able to leverage viral moments as a way to launch themselves into the national consciousness way before they started attaching a run for president to their names. That's something that a lot of people here on the Hill are talking about as we look at people like Josh Hawley and others in these hearings. Are they going to try to use these moments to launch attacks and try to land an attack on this nominee while all eyes are on this moment? And that really is the larger game.
And let's be clear here, too. You know, there are some conservatives who fundamentally disagree with Judge Jackson's judicial philosophy, but do think that some of these attacks go too far. I have like 10 seconds left, Allie. We know that Judge Jackson had been confirmed by at least 3 Republicans, for a lower court position. What's your sense? Can you handicap it now? How many Republicans might get on board this time around, if any? And by the way, none need to, right? Because Democrats could do this on their own.
Right. Well, Democrats could do this on their own. I know I asked Dick Durbin about this earlier. He said hope springs eternal. Okay. That's sort of the mindset here when you talk about if this is going to be a bipartisan confirmation. But at the same time, we are looking at those Republicans. And you're right. If all 50 Democrats get on board here, all they need is Kamala Harris, the vice president, to come in and break the tie. That being said, the White House and Democrats really do want this to be a bipartisan confirmation. A lot of people holding their cards close to their vest, though.
If she does get confirmed, though, wouldn't change the ideological makeup of the court as it stands. Allie Vitali on the Hill. Allie, thank you. I know we'll be talking again over the next couple days. I want to bring in now Christine Todd Whitman. She is the former Republican governor of New Jersey and an ex-head of the EPA. Governor, welcome to the show. It's nice to see you tonight.
Good to be with you.
So I'm having you on in part because you signed this letter along with about 24 other self-described conservatives asking the Senate to confirm Judge Jackson quickly, saying in part, we hope that for a change, Judge Jackson's confirmation process can be a moment of consensus around a truly excellent person who will add diversity and so much more to the court. So let me ask you, Governor, as a longtime Republican, why do you back Judge Jackson?
Because I think she's the right person for the court, particularly at this moment. To have a Black woman on the court, we need people on the court who represent the people of the United States. And Judge Jackson is coming with a different background, a different set of life experiences, a different way of approaching issues. I think her voice will be incredibly important there. And so I've always been for expeditious handling of nominees, because once somebody like Judge Jackson is nominated for this position, they're frozen. They can't do anything else. And so just to hold them up for the sake of holding them up makes no sense at all. And I've argued for a while that there ought to be a time limit put on some of these nominations so that people do get moved through. Going through a thorough process, don't get me wrong, you have a right to question everything, and you should. Legitimate questions and bring up legitimate issues of concern. But just to hold people up because you can, it doesn't make any sense and doesn't serve the country well.
We just talked about some of the GOP arguments against her, some of which are not super grounded in fact, let's say. What do you make of that?
Well, I guess I'm not surprised, unfortunately. I think the discussion you were having about presidential hopes of some of these members is only too true. And having been through hearings myself, there were certainly times when it's clear that the senator asking the question or the congressman asking the question, or a woman, mostly the men, really weren't interested in the answer. They were just interested in their quote and their question and how it would play back home. And, that's distressing. That's too bad, but that's what's going to happen. And I think she's prepared for that.
Do you expect any members of your party to cross over and vote for her, even though, as we mentioned, the court ideological makeup will stay the same? And do you think this process is still the fairest way? Just to tee up on what you said earlier, to get the most qualified people on the court, do you worry about how people see this process optically, like Americans who don't live in Washington, right, who are out there in the country looking at this?
Well, I can't think of a better way, frankly. Is it the best way? Maybe not, but it certainly is a way to get those issues out there, get issues and concerns out there. And it lets the American people know what they're getting, as it were. Although, obviously, as you point out, some of these issues that are being brought up are disingenuous. They're not reflective of the facts. But unfortunately, that's happening throughout our country right now on a whole host of issues. And this is going to be no different than that, I'm afraid.
Governor Todd Whitman, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate your time tonight on what is a big day here in Washington. Thank you. It is. You can join us tomorrow, another big day right here on NBC News Now. Wall-to-wall coverage of the Q&A, the questions and answers from senators and Judge Jackson. That starts at 8:30 Eastern. Again, live all day long. Watch it here on NBC News Now. So a lot going on in Washington and a lot going on overseas, with all eyes on Mariupol, that city in Ukraine that's refusing to surrender to Russia. I mean that literally, right? They are literally rejecting this Kremlin demand that the city cave or else. And the or else is the really scary part here, because Mariupol has seen the most intense Russian attacks for more than 3 weeks now, with the fight there turning more and more deadly. Russian troops attacking a school building, going after a theater where hundreds of people had been sheltered. The fighting making it harder to try and make rescues, with innocent people killed. An estimated 2,300 have died in that city, where they've seen some of the worst horrors of the war. They're trying to survive without water, without heat, without medicine. I spoke to Maxim Borodin, Mariupol city council member who has since escaped. He made his way to the western part of the country not too long ago today. Listen to part of that conversation. Before I let you go, the last EU diplomat to leave Mariupol, who is a Greek official, told Reuters that it'll become part of a list of cities that were completely destroyed by war, naming Coventry, Aleppo, Grozny, etc. What goes through your mind when you hear your home included on a list like that?
We try with our relations with our friends not to think about this. Our things only about people who need help to get out from the city.
It comes as we're learning about the terrifying escape of 2 Associated Press journalists from that city in Mariupol, apparently the last of the foreign press there. They were told if they got caught by the Russians, they'd be forced to go on camera and say everything they reported on was a lie. They were escorted by Ukrainian soldiers through the destroyed city with artillery, with machine gun fire flying right past them. One of the reporters remembered the feeling of shockwaves through his body every time shells crashed near him. They had to cross through 15 Russian checkpoints, each one surrounded with heavily armed Russian soldiers. The mother in the front of the car praying furiously. They were with a family of 3 before they finally made it to the relative safety of the Ukrainian front line. And by the way, that is one story of one city. Ali Arouzi is in Lviv. And Ali, those stories are all over Ukraine. It's particularly centered around Mariupol, this key port city. We've said, Ukrainian officials have said no surrender. They are not backing down, as what we're hearing from Western officials is that this war seems to be at a stalemate right now.
That's right. I mean, the port city of Mariupol, when you talk about siege and starvation tactics, that's what they're doing there. The Russians haven't been able to make the advances. They haven't been able to capture the city in its entirety. They've circled the place. So they're trying to bomb and starve the civilians there into submission. And as you mentioned, Hallie, they're not giving up. They gave them an ultimatum last night. They said, the fighters of Mariupol, if they put their weapons down, leave the city, then we'll let humanitarian aid in. We'll let the civilians out. And the people of Mariupol said, no, we're not going to surrender our city to the Russians. We're going to stay and fight. And that, of course, is a very worrying aspect because it's been hit so hard already. I guess the people there are now bracing for an absolute worst case scenario there. And what could that be? That could be anybody's guess, given the death and destructions that the Russians have unleashed there so far.
Pull back a little bit.
They've destroyed 90% of the city.
Well, that's right. I mean, the city is leveled. That's what I heard from that council member. You've got a senior official saying Russia overall is desperate to try and get some momentum there, saying that, hey, maybe these attacks on civilians could be this just twisted and terrible way of Russia trying to get leverage at the negotiating table. We saw them hit a mall in Kyiv on Sunday. At least 8 people were killed there. What do we know about the status of that situation?
Yeah, I mean, look, Kyiv is a place that they haven't been able to encircle yet, like Mariupol. The Russians have been plagued by, logistical problems. Their troops have been hit hard. Over the weekend, the attacks there seemed to slow down a bit, and that was only for the Russians to regroup, get supply lines back up, get ammunitions up again. And this morning, they hit Kyiv again. They hit a shopping mall there. As you mentioned, about 8 people at least were killed in that shopping mall, buried in rubble. And, of course, the situation has become so dangerous in Kyiv that the mayor has put another one of those very strict 35-hour curfews on the city that began tonight. So the only time people can leave their homes is to go into bomb shelters. So it's a horrifying situation for the residents of Kyiv.
And the images coming out of it are just gut-wrenching. Ali Arouzi live there in Lviv. Thank you, with the senior NATO official saying, hey, there is no winning this war. Ali, thanks. With that as the backdrop, you've got the White House today telling American companies to get ready for potential Russian cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. Why? They're pointing to more warning signs that Russia is getting ready for this kind of attack, like scanning websites or looking for vulnerabilities inside different networks. Tonight, you've got President Biden set to host some leaders of different businesses at the White House. And earlier today, he talked with NATO leaders for about an hour about Russia's brutal tactics in Ukraine, including what we just talked about with Ali, those attacks on civilians. The call coming just days before he's set to leave for that extraordinary NATO summit in Brussels, the one that was put in place super last minute by the NATO Secretary General. I want to bring in now Shannon Pettypiece. Shannon, this cyber attack warning from the White House. It feels like we heard a lot about this prior to the actual invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Once the military action on the ground started, that receded, frankly. It got backburned a little bit. Now the White House is putting this front and center again. Why?
Well, the White House says they have some specific intelligence in recent days that indicates that Russia was exploring options for a cyber attack on critical infrastructure. The officials didn't specify which piece of critical infrastructure that could be. They didn't go into details about how they know Russia is exploring their options, but indicating that there is a sense that Russia is looking to do something. And they use the word predatory behavior. They said it's something you see a lot from nation states where they're looking around for vulnerabilities in software, vulnerabilities in a company's network, looking around on websites, trying to scrape up data. And that is what the type of activity that officials say they have been seeing from Russia. And this warning today, they said very publicly, is to tell companies to get on guard. They said they gave a classified briefing a few days ago to the companies they think could directly be affected by the specific intelligence they have received. But more broadly, they are trying to get the message out there to companies to patch the holes in your software, to update passwords and authentications, to essentially be prepared now more than ever, because there is a growing sense from the intelligence that Russia is looking for some opportunities to strike the U.S. Of course, they didn't have any specific threats on that. They did not say there's something in the imminent days, but certainly the sense that there is a desire for Russia to carry out something like that.
Shannon Pettypiece live for us there outside the White House. Shannon, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Rescue crews are looking through debris tonight for any kind of clues about why a plane carrying 132 people crashed in southern China earlier today. And look, this is what that whole area looked like after the plane went down. You can see some of the debris on the ground from Chinese state media. You can see pieces of the aircraft around. This is a shot, smoke coming up of what seems to be the crash site through the mountains. The Chinese president, Xi Jinping, ordering an all-out rescue effort. It was a domestic flight on a Boeing 737. It left at around 1:11 local time, according to a flight tracking website, Flight Radar 24. About an hour into the flight, that radar indicates the plane started falling, right? It lost altitude, going from 29,000 feet, obviously, to the ground in a matter of minutes. We don't know anything about what caused the crash. We don't know anything about the rescue effort, potential recovery effort either. Boeing says it's in touch with the NTSB to help the investigation into what happened. Tom Costello is following the story for us. And Tom, it's horrific every time we hear about a crash like this, and we don't often hear about a passenger plane like this going down. What else do we know, if anything?
So this was a 737-800. Importantly, this is not the 737 MAX,
which we talked a lot about.
It's the same airframe, but it is that operates on a completely different computer system that essentially ensures it has the right trim. That computer system is what led to the MAX crashes. Right. This is not that. It's a very reliable plane, but very concerning. 132 people were on board. All indications are at this point that everybody on board died. This plane, you talk about the descent. It was at cruising altitude, 29,000 feet. Suddenly, for no apparent reason, it is in a nosedive. I mean, like a lawn dart. It is going straight down. And within 90 seconds to 2 minutes, it hit the ground.
Wow.
And there is video. Chinese state television has run the video. We've seen some of this video as well on social media showing it going straight down like like a lawn dart. So that immediately begs the question, of course, what possibly could have brought this plane down? Weather was fine. And listen, you don't have weather at 29,000 feet anyway. You're above the clouds, right? So whatever happened, the thinking is right now, some incredible structural failure of some sort, maybe involving the horizontal stabilizer, the tail assembly, if you will. If not that, what about the crew? How well were they performing? Yeah. They're going to go through all of that, including maintenance records, including what was the crew doing before this crash ever happened. And they need to find those black boxes, the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder. The cockpit voice recorder literally records everything said inside the cockpit, and then all the alarms and the buzzers going off. That would help if they could hear that. Flight data recorder, about 1,000 or more pieces of data on how the plane is performing. How about that stabilizer on the back? What was the speed like? Do they have any unusual event on board this plane, which they would have never anticipated? But I want to emphasize this is one of the safest planes in the world. 5,000 are in service around the world. 800 here in the United States. You and I fly on them every day. Right. They're very common, very safe. Whatever happened here was really out of the ordinary.
Pretty reliable plane, pretty reliable airline, too, no?
Yeah, China Eastern has done pretty well. And what's interesting is China has dramatically upped its safety of aviation over the last 10 to 20 years after they had some bad years in the 90s. So China Eastern is a pretty good airline in terms of its safety record. And the Chinese have taken the entire aviation safety picture very seriously. But China Eastern has now grounded the rest of its 737-800 fleet until they get to the bottom of what's going on.
So next step then is to find and recover that black box.
That's going to be critical. As you would imagine, families are desperate for answers. They've been gathering in this nearby town. It's highly unlikely that there's going to be any good news for the families. It looks really bad for the families. They want to find the critical pieces of the wreckage. They want to find the black boxes.
Tom Costello, thank you so much for this reporting. It is always tough when we have to talk about something like that.
It's terrible. Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
the last 30 minutes or so, we saw tornado warnings issued for parts of Texas. And already you've got folks reporting some tornado damage in Jacksboro. That's about 60 miles north of Fort Worth. Right now, you've got 22 million people in the path of what could be a really dangerous outbreak of severe thunderstorms in that southern region. Over the next few days, you could see more tornadoes in some states. You could see hail the size of a baseball and winds really causing problems. Our weather team says the last time we saw a threat level this high was 2 years ago, right? This doesn't happen every day. Not too long ago, late this afternoon, the governor of Texas told people there to start getting emergency crews ready to mobilize before these storms happen. And boy, is Texas getting slammed, right? It's not just these weather forecasts, it's these deadly wildfires that we've been talking about. And winds from this new round of severe weather could really make those fires worse. You've got red flag warnings in effect for a lot of western and southern Texas today. And Al Roker is tracking all of it. Okay, Al, give us first the forecast here, right? When do we see the worst of it?
Well, it's going to be over the next 48 hours, Hallie, and depending on where you are. Right now, we have severe thunderstorm watches and tornado watches, really, in southern Oklahoma all the way down through Texas. We've got some tornado warnings up in that area. So we've got a severe risk, 22 million people, 2-inch hail, strong tornadoes possible, wind gusts of 70 miles per hour from Dallas to Tyler, Lufkin, Houston, Austin, just west of or east of San Antonio, the chance for strong tornadoes in this area in red. The area in blue from Wichita Falls down to Victoria and San Antonio, 2-inch hail likely. Now we move into tomorrow. This threat moves to the east, so it's the lower Mississippi River Valley, Jackson, Baton Rouge, Mobile, up to Tupelo, out to Beaumont. This area in red from Columbus down to New Orleans, out to Beaumont. Again, the risk of strong tornadoes there. And then by Wednesday, it moves to the southeast. 25 million people at risk, stretching from Jacksonville, Panama City, Albany, Georgia, up to Norfolk and out to Knoxville for damaging winds, hail, and a few tornadoes possible. This system, greatest threat for eastern Texas and Louisiana tonight. Nocturnal tornadoes possible, torrential downpours, areas of flooding. Tomorrow, this destructive line for the Gulf Coast, from the Gulf Coast all the way on up into the Ohio River Valley. Tornadoes may continue into the overnight hours, and then Wednesday the heavy rain moves into the mid-Atlantic, and we're looking at some showers and thunderstorms making their way into the northeast. And we've also got flood watches, Hallie. 16 million people from Memphis, Birmingham, Hattiesburg, New Iberia. We're talking some places picking up 6 inches of rain before this is all over. Locally, 5 to 6 inches of rain possible. So we're going to really be watching this very closely. Again, the wind threat out through Texas was going to continue to fan those wildfires, but we're really worried about those nighttime tornadoes.
Well, I was going to say, let me go back to that, Al, because I saw it pop up on one of the screens, these nocturnal tornadoes, ones that happen at night. Those are so scary. Listen, all tornadoes are scary, but those when people are sleeping, when they might not hear those tornado alerts, right? I mean, that's where we start to get, and I know you as a meteorologist start to get really worried.
That's right. These nighttime tornadoes are twice as likely to cause deaths because, as you mentioned, people are asleep. They're not awake. They're not unaware of the warnings. And it's difficult to even see the tornadoes if you are awake. So here's what we like people to do. If you want to have a warning wake you up, if you've got an iPhone or iPad, you go to Settings, Notifications, Government Alerts. That will allow your phone to wake you up with the latest tornado warnings. And if you've got an Android phone, you go to Advanced Settings, Emergency Alerts, or you can also download from your app store the Red Cross Tornado app, and that will also set off warnings as well, Hallie. So there are ways to use this, but make sure your phone is charged up as you go to bed tonight if you're in those areas, because if your phone isn't charged, you're not going to get these alerts.
And that it's close to your nightstand. Al, this is such important information. We're going to post this segment and so people can see all that on our Instagram page, on our Twitter page too, so folks know where to find it. They can look at it again. Al Roker, thank you so much. Good to see you.
You bet.
Still to come on this show. Miami Beach, they have had enough of spring break madness. We'll talk about what the city is doing after a very dangerous weekend. Look at this, that ended with a stampede of college kids in the streets. And a new rule could help in the fight against climate change, what the administration wants to do to keep companies honest about their role in polluting the environment. So Miami Beach just announced a state of emergency during spring break after a couple of shootings over the last couple days. It lets the city put in place a curfew. It starts midnight Thursday, right, later in the week through next weekend. That's after part of Miami Beach's Ocean Drive. You know Ocean Drive. It's in all the movies. Look at this. Had to be shut down. Partiers were swarming the streets. One of the shootings sent 3 people to the hospital. The same thing happened last year when an emergency curfew was put in place after some confrontations between police and partiers. And listen, this spring break violence is not limited to Miami Beach. Police in Dallas say 10 people were shot at a spring break party over the weekend, and several others were hurt. Disney's CEO Bob Chapek told employees today the company made a mistake by not taking a stance over Florida's controversial bill that opponents call the Don't Say Gay bill. The Wall Street Journal reports this came at a town hall meeting, this acknowledgement of error, right, from the super powerful, super important guy, after employees rebelled against the company because they felt the company was too hesitant to speak out against this bill. Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to sign the legislation that would prevent teachers from talking about gay and gender identity issues before the 4th grade and requires all the other grades to talk about this in ways that are age or developmentally appropriate. Initially, right, Disney had said, hey, we're not going to take a public position, saying that public stands on controversial issues often get, quote, weaponized. But he changed his mind after employees spoke up and some staffers started staging protests with plans for a full-day walkout tomorrow. Katie Beck joins us now with a closer look at how this all went down. And Katie, this is interesting, right? In some ways, this is like the power of the voice of employees making a difference for this huge corporate conglomerate.
Yeah, that's right. Disney employees make up the largest private sector base of employees in the entire state of Florida. So you're dealing with a lot of people here. 75,000 employees is a massive voice that they are certainly hearing from now. They were incredibly disappointed about the silent position that was taken on this initially. They said that that silence said to them that Disney does not support equal rights and sort of stood as a contradiction or a hypocritical way of, you know, going against the values that they want to put in their creative product. Disney is a company that promotes kindness, good values, generosity throughout the themes in their movies and in their creative. And these people are saying, by staying silent on this bill, you are standing in direct contrast to all of that. So they are certainly walking back that statement a long way now, Hallie, as you've heard from the CEO today in that town hall meeting he had with employees. He says he now understands just how damaging that silence was and how that made employees feel. He's also committed to immediately and indefinitely suspending all political donations in the state of Florida. That was after it was exposed that Disney actually gave political donations to all sponsors and co-sponsors of this bill. That raised a lot of people's attention on this issue and really was sort of an ignition point for a lot of these employees to start making their voices heard.
So was this acknowledgement of a mistake, right, by the CEO? Is that enough to stop this, you know, big walkout that was supposed to happen tomorrow? Do we know?
We don't know an exact number of how many people will be participating. We know only a fraction of employees have actually gone back to the lot to work. So it could really be just more a symptom of that it's not going to be a very visual event based on the fact that a lot of people are still working remotely. What we do know is that there is a large group of people who are discussing and are organizing that full day of walkout. They have been told that they are not legally protected if they do that. These 15-minute breaks they have been taking, these walkouts have been protected under employment law in Florida. A full day of missing work will not be. So they are actually potentially putting their jobs on the line to take a very principled stand on this issue. We'll see tomorrow just how many take that up. But at this point, we can tell through Twitter and other social media that they are organized, and that is planned for tomorrow.
Katie Beck, I know you'll stay on top of that. We'll look for you again, potentially tomorrow, to talk about that. Appreciate it. Let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, one man has been killed. Another 24 are hurt after a gunfight at a car show in Arkansas. Officials say this was a shootout. It started between a couple people and that these victims were just bystanders caught in the middle. One person has been arrested so far, but it's not clear yet how they're connected to what happened. Number 2, speaking of Disney, the Shanghai Disneyland Resort is closed until further notice because of COVID cases surging in that Chinese city. It comes as Hong Kong is cutting quarantine time and travel bans on incoming flight. President Xi Jinping says the country's zero COVID policy has hurt the economy there. Number 3, the Biden administration today declared Myanmar's military committed genocide. It is a formal declaration of genocide against the Muslim minority group known as the Rohingya. More than 700,000 Rohingya refugees have left Myanmar since 2017, saying forces there have killed en masse, mass rapes, mass arson. It's horrific. The country's military denies the allegations, but again, a formal declaration now from the administration carries some weight. Number 4, the Securities and Exchange Commission has proposed some new rules that would make businesses explain the impact that they're having on climate change. It means companies would have to document just how much greenhouse gas they're emitting for the first time ever. The SEC hopes that keeping tabs on companies could help fight the climate crisis. Number 5, Jergens is recalling one of its moisturizers because it may contain some bacteria. Look at the bottle, right? It's certain bottles of the brand's Ultra Healing Moisturizer made back in October. This bacteria is like mostly harmless, the company says, but they say just to be safe, you should still stop using this if you have it. Take one last look here. All right, still to come. Saving Ukraine's kids from the horrors of war. We're going to talk about what the U.S. and other countries are doing to help children who have nowhere to call home. And did you hear about this just today? A Moscow court is banning Facebook and Instagram from doing business in Russia. We'll tell you the perhaps surprising reason the judge gave when we get back. Gig workers like Lyft and Uber drivers, they are feeling the hurt from higher gas prices. We'll talk about what companies are doing to keep them from being driven out of business coming up. But first, let's go back to the war in Ukraine, because the UN is now saying something like 10 million Ukrainians have now had to leave their homes, including people who have left the country or just moved to other parts of Ukraine looking for somewhere safe. Here's what a spokesperson for the United Nations Refugee Agency told me about this not too long ago. Where are these folks going inside Ukraine's borders? Do you think it's just a matter of time before they try to get out?
Well, as you say, we estimate that there are around 6.5 million inside the country who have left their homes. Where they're going to safer places, to the countryside. Many of them are going to the west.
Outside Ukraine, you have places like this one, an orphanage, right? Orphanages working around the clock to help the youngest victims of this war, innocent children. Some of the leaders, like Wendy Farrell, they're even working to bring these kids back to the U.S. until it's safe enough for them to go home. She flew from Missouri to Ukraine, and you know what's sticking with her? The stories of these kids' resiliency.
They've experienced abuse or neglect, and so they are familiar with trauma, but they're resilient. So they are here, they're in safety, and we're so thankful for that. But it is traumatic because they're having to leave their home once again into an unknown situation.
Dasha Burns is joining me now from Poland. Dasha, we know that Poland has taken in the most refugees since this all started, but I'll tell you that Matthew Saltmarsh from the UNHCR told me not as many are heading into Poland as they used to be, right? Tell me what you're seeing today.
Look, Hallie, so many people that have came here with very little, but these children, the 31 Ukrainian orphans we met today, had so little to begin with, and now they have even less. They had to flee their orphanage in Ukraine. The director had to get them over the border, which was a tough task in itself. He said, though, speaking of resilience, that all along the journey, the children sang songs to keep their spirits up. Ukraine does have a pretty large population of orphans, Hallie. A lot of them are what they call social orphans, meaning that some of them have parents who are alive but aren't able to take care of them because of issues like alcoholism, which runs rampant in many parts of the country. And a girl we met, a 15-year-old girl named Leah, is a good example of what so many kids have gone through. She has family in Ukraine right now, but she's here in Poland with this group of orphans, and thinking about what's going on in her home country has her terrified. Take a listen to what she told us.
You're scared?
Yes. My mom in Mariupol.
Oh.
And my dad in Kiev with my brother. And it's hard. I don't know what happened with my mom. If she died or like, yes.
Have you been able to contact them at all?
And again, speaking of resiliency, Hallie, right after that conversation, Leah sat down at the keyboard and played us a beautiful song called Pray for Ukraine. It had most of us in the room in tears. She is just an incredible young woman, Hallie.
I mean, she sounds incredible. And her, no kid should have to go through that, Dasha. I think one of the most heart-wrenching pieces of this is knowing that child psychologists, that Poland has redirected all of them, basically, towards Ukrainians who have arrived after they've experienced this kind of trauma. When you talk to some of these experts, what are they telling you about the specifics of this resiliency and trauma these kids are facing?
Yeah, look, I mean, the mental health part of this is just a massive issue that has barely begun to be addressed. I mean, so many of these kids, especially these orphans, have already gone through so much trauma. I mean, take Leah, for example. She grew up in Mariupol, and in 2014, when the conflict came to that region, she had to uproot her life and move to Western Ukraine, and now her life has been uprooted again. And like I mentioned, I mean, there are a lot of Ukrainians that have already lived through a time of war and now are seeing, of course, things get so much worse. And that's why Wendy Farrell is trying to get these kids to the U.S. to give them some sense of normalcy for at least a little while until hopefully eventually it's safe for them to get back to the U.S. Hallie.
Dasha Burns, live for us from Poland. Dasha, thank you for sharing their stories. Facebook and Instagram, they are banned today from operating in Russia. A judge in Moscow says it's because Meta, the parent company of Facebook, is guilty of, quote, extremist activities. This ban also includes WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta too. That's important because it's how a lot of people internationally text people who live in other countries. All right, so why is this happening? The Russian prosecutor's office says it's because of calls for violence against Russian citizens on Meta's platform. Earlier this month, Meta said it would let users in some countries do that against Russians and Russian soldiers in context of the Ukraine invasion. Later clarifying this, saying it's relaxed its rules against violent speech only for people in Ukraine and only directed at Russian military in Ukraine. This isn't necessarily this conflict between Russia and Meta new. Russia had already blocked Instagram and Facebook after Meta said accounts from Russian media like RT and Sputnik could no longer use the platform because they were spreading lies. Ben Collins joins me now. So it's an interesting twist to this whole thing, right? Because Facebook and Instagram are out. What is the point of this extremist designation from the Kremlin?
Well, first of all, it's a way to send a message to Facebook saying, you can't set up shop here anymore, and we're not putting up with your stuff. It's important to remember a lot of people in Russia use VK, which is pretty much a direct one-to-one clone of Facebook, but with a lot worse organizing tools. So they are already, all of their profiles are probably doubled up on VK anyway. They're trying to get people to move over to that platform, which the Russian government has basically oversight over. Until then, you can't, if you're on Facebook, the Russian government says that you can post there and you won't get in any trouble. But there's really no proof that's actually going to happen because of these new, what they call fake news laws. Pretty much anything that's against the Russian government right now is up for scrutiny legally within Russia.
Yeah, total crackdown on, obviously, journalism coming out of the country. I thought it was interesting that WhatsApp was excluded from this, right? We talked about how a lot of people use it to text. Feels a little strategic, no?
Oh, absolutely. There's no, I mean, WhatsApp is under the Meta umbrella in the same way that Instagram is under the Meta umbrella. So it doesn't really make sense, but it's not really supposed to make sense. A lot of commerce goes through WhatsApp. A lot of the ability to communicate with the outside world goes through WhatsApp. Otherwise, you're paying for long distance calls, basically. Right. It's a way for people to just, conduct business overseas. If that goes away overnight, that's going to be a real problem. They are trying to go up to the line every moment with this thing to make it so people aren't jarred by these massive free speech crackdowns. One of these days, they're going to overstep it, but they can't do it with WhatsApp overnight. It's just there's too much business, and there are too many family members that communicate that way in Russia.
Ben Collins, live for us on that. Ben, thank you. Coming up here on the show, check out this video. Don't worry, it's a rental, but the driver of this Tesla, is still in big trouble. That's not legal. That is actually not legal. We're going to talk about it in a second. Plus, what a difference a tax break makes. The governors of Maryland and Georgia taking more than 30 cents off the price of a gallon of gas for now. So could your state be next? It's after the break. employees paid to drive are feeling the hit from higher gas prices. So companies like Lyft and Uber are starting to do something about it. We'll take a look coming up. But first, NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Midwest Bureau, 7 people were taken to the hospital after fentanyl was released through the air vents at a juvenile detention center in Ohio. Everyone is stable right now and expected to be okay, but officials have no idea how this drug ended up in the air vents. They're still trying to figure that out. Also out of our Midwest Bureau, a case of bird flu at an Iowa farm means more than 5 million chickens will have to be killed. The second confirmed case of this kind of bird flu in the state. The first was at a farm that infected almost 50,000 turkeys. Now, the CD says this kind of thing is not an immediate public health concern, and you're still okay to eat, poultry, chicken like you get from the grocery store. From our West Coast Bureau, LA police are looking for a driver, oh my Lord, who tried to pull off this risky stunt. Are you kidding? Come on. They rented a Tesla, whoever did this. And then they did this. It looks like let me see if we can play it again. They fly over a hill. They try to catch some air with clearly people watching. That is so dangerous. They ended up crashing, luckily, into only parked cars and some trash cans, right? So nobody was hurt. But the person ditched the car and then left. The driver will probably face hit and run charges once they are caught, likely only a matter of time. Come on, people. With gas prices hitting record highs, 2 states are declaring a new kind of holiday. Happy holidays to you. A gas tax holiday if you live in Maryland and Georgia. They're putting in place a rule that gets rid of the tax that you pay there per gallon for now. Okay, it's temporary, so how does it work? Gas station owners have already paid the tax on the gas that goes into their tanks, so this legislation would give them a refund on that, the idea being they then cut prices for you. And there's this push to do the same kind of thing on the federal level, with 6 Democratic governors sending a letter to Congress asking to suspend the federal gas tax, which is 18 cents a gallon. The average state tax is 39 cents. This is real money, Rahima Ellis, who is joining me now. 30 cents on a gallon of gas ain't bad, right? You've got these 2 states doing it now. What does it mean? I mean, for people in these states, pretty much an immediate impact.
Absolutely. They say every penny counts and the pennies add up to dollars. So take a look at what we have. We've got a full screen we want to show you of what does it mean in these states where they have passed it. In the state of Maryland, their state gasoline tax is 36 cents a gallon. So if you have a 12-gallon tank and you fill it up, you're going to save $4.32 a gallon. Real money. The state of Georgia, their gasoline tax per the state is 38 cents. Again, on that tank, to fill it up of a 12-gallon tank, you're going to save nearly $5 on what has been enacted in these 2 states alone. It is already in effect in those 2 states. And that counts for something for people who are going to the pumps and trying to fill up. They're feeling a little less pressure today than they were last week. Hallie?
Can I just call out my sweet floor director, Bird, who lives in Maryland? He paid a little less this weekend when he went to fill up. Like, the impact is happening now. You've got 18 states who are looking at actively considering this kind of holiday. What are the chances that actually happens, Rahima? Because I can tell you in Washington, any appetite to do it on the federal level really isn't there because it's temporary, right? Like, this isn't something that lasts forever. So eventually those 36 cents or 30, those go back on.
Yeah, it would go off. It's not forever because the gasoline tax pay for certain things like bridges and highways, pay for transportation costs. So states and the federal government, they need that money. But they also need people to be able to get to their workplace, to school, and to hospitals, et cetera. So they're trying to provide a little relief for folks. As you point out, on the federal level, there is a proposal by by some Democratic senators to say, let's reduce that 18 cents federal gas tax for the rest of the year. It's come up against some opposition from some Republicans who think that this is a political stunt for some Democrats who are facing tough re-election in the midterms, and so they're not in favor of it. There are also some Democrats who are saying, wait a minute, because they don't know if they suspend this federal gas tax, is there any guarantee that the major oil companies will go along with it and actually pass that savings on to consumers? So there's a lot of debating and discussion that's got to go on about this on the federal level before anything like that would happen. Hallie?
Rahima Ellis, keeping your eye. As always, Rahima, thank you on the things happening across the country. Appreciate it. This brings us quite seamlessly to tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on because you know that gas is hitting hard some of these Lyft and Uber drivers, right? So Lyft today is joining Uber and Instacart in adding a fuel charge to help drivers offset what they pay at the pump. It's because some of these drivers have been eating into their paychecks just to put gas in the car to get you the stuff that you need or to get you where you're going, right? But are these surcharges enough to actually make up for what they're spending? Vaughn Hilliard has more.
Today, Lyft is the latest company to add a fuel surcharge onto its service, paid by customers going directly to drivers, after calls from drivers for help in bearing the burden of today's high gas prices.
From last year to now, my gas has gone up almost $300 per month. So any help we can get is fantastic.
Lyft announcing the addition of an extra 55-cent charge onto every ride.
The gas price is going up. I think it's only fair.
This after Uber last week implemented its own, up to 55 cents for a ride and up to 45 cents for Uber Eats deliveries. Both companies saying their fuel surcharges will last for at least 60 days. Changes after pressure from the rising gas prices. Rideshare companies do not cover the costs of filling up the tank. A coalition of drivers just last week demonstrating outside of Los Angeles. Drivers across the country reevaluating what routes they take.
You don't really want to go that far anymore.
But it's not just rideshare companies hearing the pleas. Instacart, the grocery delivery app, says it will also do the same, adding on 40 cents to each of its customer orders.
Chris?
Hey, yes.
Here's your groceries.
But do these new charges cover that extra cost?
It's not enough. We need more.
Mike Robinson has driven for Lyft for 6 years in San Bernardino, California.
That cuts extremely into our profits, the gas. And so we want to make money. We got to work longer hours.
Providing delivery service at the same prices or the same fares as before the fuel price hikes is just not sustainable.
Arun Sundarajan is the author of The Sharing Economy.
At the same time, a lot of riders will say, we have seen the increase in price in order to catch an Uber or a Lyft rise over time.
I expect that there will be a lot less pushback from riders at this point in time from this wave of price increases compared to what was happening last year, because there's a much more transparent and easy to understand reason for why fares are going up.
You know, I think that's Vaughn Hilliard joins us now. I think that's super interesting, Vaughn. Can I just share with our audience here? Like, I used Instacart the other day to get some stuff for my sick kid, you know, and I noticed the fuel charge was like 45 cents for that particular Instacart run. You know, happy to pay it, obviously. Drivers want a little bit more, don't they? Some of them think that it should be even more.
Right. Some think that it should be even more here because these drivers are dealing with the reality that gas prices in the last year have gone anywhere from 35% to 40% increase. And yet when they go and fill up, for a great many of these drivers, they're not even able to break even, not to mention even turning here a profit. And when you're looking at this gig industry, right, these are folks that don't have sick pay. They don't have overtime pay, right. Hallie. These are gig workers. And essentially it crescendoed enough to where there was enough noise where ultimately Uber, Lyft, Instacart said, OK, we'll provide you a surcharge. But on every ride, all that is for Uber or Lyft, it's 55 cents per ride. Again, for so many, that doesn't even begin to meet the profit point.
You talked about the wave of pressure on some of these countries. Talk about where that pressure was coming from, right? Because some of this, it feels like some of this could be optics for these companies, right? That they want to be seen as doing good things for their drivers. And some of it was true, like necessity. They needed to do this to retain people to work for them because that's what their company is built on, this gig economy.
They need those drivers. Yes, they don't have to provide them a slew of benefits, right? But ultimately, they do make up their workforce, you know, and to a great extent, there is some goodwill involved. The entire amount of that surcharge is going to those workers. But you said it there, it's also necessity. They have to retain these drivers in order to make their companies run. They lost a great number of them during the pandemic who turned to other jobs here. And if Uber, Lyft, Instacart are not able to provide the services to match that demand, well, ultimately, it's the companies that then falter, Hallie.
Vaughn Hilliard with that story for us. Vaughn, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, my friend.
And that does it for this hour. Tomorrow, remember, we've got coverage all day long of the senators questioning Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, starting at 8:30 Eastern, right here on NBC News Now. It is going to be a busy 24 hours. We're glad you're right here with us. We're glad to have you. Our coverage of today's news picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.